In this video, we will learn the theory of reference variables. We already covered primitive variables. Now it's time to understand what are reference variables in Java. So just like primitive variables, reference variables are also variables to hold something. But in this case, instead of a value, we are trying to hold an object basically. We already understand the concept of classes and objects, and we know that we have to create objects in order to do something. Now the thing is, how do we store that object? How do we uh, use that object? And that's why we create the reference variables to handle an object. Now reference variables are used to refer an object. It's basically a bit pattern. What it doesn't actually hold the object, but it's a bit pattern. It's kind of an address, and that basically represents a way to how to access the actual object, and that's why we say that it's a handle. So whenever we define or declare a reference variable, it is basically a bit pattern, but JVM understands how to get the actual object from that bit pattern. So we do not access an object directly, but we do it via a reference variable. Whatever operations we perform on a reference variable, that will ultimately modify or will affect the state of the actual object. So let's understand in a bit more detail. So let's say we have a student class, and now we have to create an object of the student class. So we declare a reference variable like this, student, and name of the reference variable, it could be anything. Let's say my student. If we don't do anything, if we declare it just like that, then reference variable has a special value. It's null. Null means that variable is not pointing to any object. Because there is no object, we have not created any object, so it doesn't know. It knows that uh, it has to point to an object of type student, but because we have not created it and we have not declared it completely, it doesn't know the actual object. So the special value of reference variables, if not initialized, is null. Now let's create an object. So let's say I do that, my student equal to new student. So we know that in Java, to create an object we use a new keyword, then class of the object, and then so we follow this syntax to create the object. What happens now? So all the objects in Java, they are created on the heap memory. Consider it as a part of memory where Java stores objects. So let's say this is the heap, the memory area where all the objects will be created. So what Java did, Java created a new student object on the heap, and this is a reference variable, my student, and now it has a bit pattern. So let's say this bit pattern is something like this, 0 1. Now this bit pattern, what JVM did, it created an object and assigned the link to that reference variable. So now our reference variable is pointing to this object. That is the whole purpose of the reference variable. So it doesn't actually hold the object, but it is a link, a handle of that object. Okay, now let's say we do some changes. We say that, now let's say we did something like, sorry, just a second. my student dot name equals to Andy. Now we are changing the property of the object using the reference variable. What Java will do, it will update the name property. Let's say name equals to Andy. Now the object is modified and the reference variable is pointing to it. So whatever operation we perform, they will be ultimately done on the object but via reference variable. Now let's say if we create another object. So let's create another object. Now name it. Okay, let's create another object. So we say student another equals to new student. Now we need a new student object. So what Java will do, it will create a new object in memory and this reference variable will point to it. So we have now two reference variable 1 and 2 and they are pointing to different student variables, sorry, student objects. So let's revise the concept of reference variable. So reference variables are basically used to refer an object. They don't hold the actual object but they are just a link to the actual object. If we don't initialize them, the default value is null. It means they are not pointing to any object, but as soon as we create a new object will be created on the heap and the link will be established and our reference variable will start pointing to that object, right? And if we create another object, then the new object will also create it on the heap and we will have another link to that object in the form of the second reference variable. So that's how we create an object and that is the purpose of reference variable. I hope it's all clear and we will cover some more things in future lessons. Thank you.